Hanif, one of the questions is, can you tell us a little bit more about how your customers are using you in the context of CI/CD?
Sure. So we have customers who, they don't want to wait until we test patches or new versions of the software for us to GA it. They want it early, they want to test it. We actually have customers that want to do that. And so for them, being in the cloud, they don't want to have something that's living there all the time. So they can just inject, now that we have the Terraform provider, they can just spin us up, test those patches, at will. They trust but verify, in other words. They trust us to test it, but they want to verify. And so that was an unintended benefit for
So that actually gives them the ability to schedule their testing and get a little more control over it instead of doing it as just an interrupt-driven approach.
Exactly.
So we also had a question, well, actually, I had a question for you, which is you mentioned that you were looking at automating about a year ago, and you said your trouble tickets went way down. Can you quantify that a little?
Well, I don't know if I could give you a definite number, but I can tell you this. Being a global solutions architect, one of the first things, I guess, I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but I'm not a paid engagement. If I get engaged, the customer doesn't pay.
Right.
And so one of the first things that I do before going in, I look at what are the issues that this customer is having, right? And I take a look. And, prior to us doing this, I can tell you that some of the larger customers, they had tons of issues. And before I go in, I ensure that all those issues are resolved. Like, we get everybody involved, and we're like, all these things, they got to be completed, right? But the customers that's adopted this methodology of using Terraform to deploy our software, as a matter of fact, I was in a meeting with one last week. We're going to go meet her next week. And she went from being totally unhappy to the point where because of these installation issues, they couldn't get past them, to being very happy after using Terraform. So I can quantify it that way. And a lot of my customers that would complain, like the first thing when I get on the phone with them, complaining about this stuff, now we're beyond that. Now they can look at the real issues of data security, which I think is the biggest benefit.
So last but not least, you mentioned that the very first step here in all of this is to rehydrate. What is your preferred and recommended beverage here?
Oh, to rehydrate?
Yes.
I don't know. I like water.
Right answer, everybody. Any other questions? Then, Hanif, thank you so very much. Oh, we did get one. Wait. Please let Alyssa run and grab you so that the folks online can hear.
All right, thank you. So just to, it's a point that Jana had made in her keynote, and that's about this automation. Do you have anything in place that's actually monitoring the automation itself? So if the automation has been compromised by a bad actor, and you have these things running in your CI/CD pipeline, which you're monitoring, how do you monitor the automation to make sure it hasn't been compromised?
That's a great question. I honestly haven't thought about, monitoring the
monitors.
the monitor. But, being I think, the fact that AWS, when you're in the cloud and you're in AWS, you start to get the sense that because they have their 99.999% uptime, you start to become comfortable enough which we probably shouldn't be. You become comfortable enough that the services will be there, the triggers will be there, your Lambda function will be there, and you get comfortable enough that you don't think about that it could be compromised and this could happen where somebody removes something and you don't get a little. But great question.
In other words, don't give them any ideas. So we haven't solved that one yet.
Right.
Okay, thank you very much, and Hanif, great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.